Since the year 1965, Sauk Valley Community College has gone through numerous challenges and opportunities. There have been countless changes to make it what it is today. Behind the dedication and interminable work of the hundreds that have kept Sauk moving forward is the man whose passionate spark ignited a fire that built a college from out of the prairie, Peter W. Dillon.
I came from a family where my father, during the Depression, had 1 year of college, and my grandfather quit when he was a sophomore in high school and came home and was the superintendent of the plant at age 19. But he had a rich history of appreciating education.
While attending the University of Colorado, Peter became heavily involved in the fraternity system and acted as a Rush chairman for 3 years. As a way of determining the caliber of potential members, he created a personalized questionnaire, which gave him insight to the young men that were recruited.
I saw on the questionnaires that many of these came from junior colleges, and I had never run into anybody from a junior college before. My senior year, I was president of our house, so I was running into these people all the time. And then when they came into our house for Rush activities, I would ask them specifically about junior colleges. You know, what is a junior college? When I came back from college, I subscribed to the Junior College Journal, and it just kind of kept the fire within me going that someday this might happen.
The earliest community colleges were primarily connected to the public schools. But as institutions cropped up across the country, the concept of the junior college began to grow. After the Second World War, the new GI Bill and the baby boom created a demand for these smaller local colleges. When the idea of Sauk Valley began coming to fruition in the late 1950s, community colleges were already prominent across the country.
We were kind of in an educational desert. Even Northern was a very small, relatively small school at that particular time. There were some very good local leaders here, and Forrest Tabor and Carl Plath, who was a relatively new superintendent here at Sterling High School, and the superintendent up in Dixon, and then Father Bonneke from Newman. Those four, we met together and finally decided that we needed to do something. It went rather quickly because I think we knew that there was going to be limited funds available for the campus, and we really needed to get in line and be first in line, not second or third or fourth.
On July 29, 1965, the Illinois State Legislature passed the Public Junior College Act, which allowed communities to expand and create junior colleges.
Everything we needed to make a case for this was in the feasibility study. And so we came up with a little booklet that explained just exactly what they needed to know to encourage them to vote yes. I don't know how many thousands of books we printed, but we made sure that every person who had a child in any of these schools, in these 10 districts, had one of these books. We really worked hard. I mean, I visited, I think there were 72 school districts, and I made the presentation. It took months to do that. And when we did have the referendum, we turned away hundreds of people that couldn't get in the voting booths to vote. That doesn't happen very often when you're asking people to create a new school district and have a tax. It was fantastic. I mean, it was a great victory. People were ready.
Once approval for the new district had been passed, the next step was to establish an educational board. From a group of 34 candidates, the community elected 7 members, including Peter, Warren Walder and Gerald S. Stuff from Dixon, Forrest Tabor of Rock Falls, Catherine Perkins of Prophetstown, Clayton Schuneman of Sterling, Kenneth Reuter from Amboy.
Forrest Tabor was elected the first president of the board, and then we just flew. There were days when we had a meeting for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that we were making decisions that fast to make sure that we were first in line, you know, for the state funds.
As the newly elected board moved forward, the next phase was to choose a site for the facility. Numerous options were narrowed down to 2 potential locations.
That was probably the most contentious thing that we did on the board. I mean, the board was practically unanimous in everything it did. The two papers helped us run the name contest. I think we had 1,800 names, and we ended up with 3 that were voted on. One was Sinisippi, one was Carl Sandburg, and the winner was Sauk Valley. We were interviewing 15 architectural firms, which took several months. We finally ended up with 2 firms out of Texas, and then from Dubuque. The reason we picked the group from Texas is that they had an approach that they took that was really unique, called the squatters approach. We had never heard about it, but it made a lot of sense because there was no technology that could speed something from here to there, so it took 3 or 4 days. They came and they actually squatted on the site, and then they would take their ideas back about a mile away, and they would work morning, noon, and night. That condensed probably 3 or 4 or 5 months' work into a week. We had a schematic drawing of the campus, and we had a general idea of what the buildings were going to look like. We didn't know at the very beginning that we were going to have a temporary facility. That wasn't something that was in the plans. I think Dr. Sable pushed the idea. We can't sit around here and wait till 1970. We can't rent the bank building in Sterling, a dilapidated building in Rock Falls, and a gymnasium in Dixon. We really needed to get on with it and open the doors. One morning I awakened. I had a drawing board in my basement, and I drew a building, and I brought it to the board, and the architects were there, and they said, you know, let's do it. It was a 44,000 square foot building, which is a little bit larger than an acre. And I had laid out the hallways and everything else. Well, we built that thing in about 4 months, and we put special signs out, and it was big news. It was a steel building. Most of the rooms didn't have ceilings. So, you know, if you were sitting in one classroom, you could really take 2 classrooms for nothing. You know, it was interesting. The faculty, of course, had grown. Even before we had the president, we had a lot of people, you know, sending in their resumes and so forth. It was crowded with 600 and some students, but it was a family. You know, it was just a great start. I think after the move from the steel building to our new building in 1970, and then it was called Old Ironsides, and it's still being used. They haven't chosen to take it down because it's very valuable.
As ground broke for the permanent building on January 6, 1967, courses continued to be held in Old Ironsides for the next 3.5 years. As the new building neared completion, Peter had already gone back to working full-time. The contributions and hours of work he put into the early years of Sauk Valley were crucial to the college's development. Classes in the permanent building began on June 22, 1970, and enrollment at Sauk had jumped from 600 when its doors first opened to 1,600. In its first summer, the new 3-story facility had a record 703 students. Work was still being done in the building, and many classrooms still lacked ceilings, which, like in Old Ironsides, created issues with noise. The community's desire to learn didn't dwindle, though, and enrollment continued to take giant strides in the following years. Finances also became a problem for the board, and the survival of Sauk Valley was turning into an uncertain issue. Dedication from the board, though, pushed the institution forward, and in July 1971, Dr. Sapel presented Can Grow, a plan which outlined the steps needed to keep Sauk alive. Dr. George E. Cole took over as president just a year later as the college persevered. By October 1980, the number of full-time students had jumped by nearly 27%, with a total of 1,100 full-time and 2,100 part-time. Dr. W. Harold Garner had become president, and the financial problems that distressed Sauk in the previous years continued early on. The college began a turnaround by the mid-'80s, and Richard L. Barrett was approved as the new president in September 1986. Improvements throughout the remainder of the decade and continued support from the community truly showed that Sauk had blossomed well from its humble beginnings. Sauk celebrated its 25th anniversary in 1990 and kicked off the decade by winning a nearly $1.5 million grant funded by the Higher Education Act. The college built a state-of-the-art nursing lab, developed a computer-assisted English composition system, and expanded student services to improve success. Change and growth continued throughout the 90s. A decision to update the college's mascot was made as well. And as in the past, the new name would be decided by one of the local kids. From over 100 submissions, Sauk Valley became known as the Skyhawks. As the 90s came to a close, Sauk had added several new programs, including 9 associate degrees and 4 certificate programs. Sauk also had an assessed value of over $1 billion. Expansion didn't slow down as it turned into the new millennium, with Dr. George Myhel taking the seat as the 5th president of the college in 2003.
I am very honored to know and have worked with Mr. Pete Dillon, who's been the single most influential person in the creation of Sauk Valley Community College.
Renovations, including a 16,000 square foot technology lab, as well as a radiology lab, supplied students with state-of-the-art resources. Even with state reductions, Sauk managed to maintain financial accountability and stability, along with incorporating 11 new associate degrees and 40 certificate programs. By the end of the decade, Sauk had launched the dual credit program, allowing high school students to earn college credit, and the Sauk Scholars Program had awarded more than $1 million to high school seniors. Having served more than 25,000 students since its doors opened, Sauk Valley continues to broaden horizons and change lives.
Whenever I go between Sterling and Dixon, I kind of look over there and say, how did that ever happen? I'm just very thankful that I had that opportunity and somehow had that spark that made me believe in this whole concept.
The pioneering spirit of those that built Sauk from the ground up in the 60s continues to drive its faculty, board members, staff, and students forward today.